the 26th of April. We'll go straight into the agenda. Item 1, apologies for absence.
Good afternoon all. We've got apologies for absence from Councillors Castle and Mather and Councillor Horncastle.
Could I put in apologies from Nigel Lodge, Service Director? Thank you.
Right, item 2, disclosure of members' interest. Does anybody have any interest to disclose? No. Item 3 is a forward plan of cabinet decisions, which is kind of for information. Is there anything you want to add, Sean?
I don't. I think have that social announcement.
Yeah. It's just for noting. Item 4 is review of land ownership, management of open land held within the housing revenue accounts. And I think you're going to present this.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, Councillor Oliver. Yeah. I'm not going to go through the whole report there. I think it's all quite, self-evident there. But basically, what I've come today really is to seek agreement to set up a task and finish group. And it's to examine the issues we currently have with open plan land. We've got quite a bit of detail there in the report. But the issue is that, especially in the sort of the old Alnwick area, we've got a number of housing estates that actually don't have their own front gardens. It's open plan land. So as such, from a housing perspective, from a housing revenue account, we're paying to maintain all of that open land. And even when people are going through the right to buy, they don't buy that land. And what's happening at the moment is, historically, there's quite a bit of development has gone on that land. We don't have a policy on how to sort of retrospectively do any enforcement on that. And also now a lot of people, when they are buying their property through the right to buy, they're actually wanting to buy that front garden space as well, or develop, put a driveway or something. At the moment, we've developed the last couple of years a license, and we'll provide a license to them, but everything's just a bit ad hoc. We don't have a proper council policy as what we're going to do. Do we sell the land? Do we not? Do we provide a license? And it's just really to set up a task and finish group with members from housing, legal department, legal team, but also some members from this committee. So it's really just to get some, if anyone's got any questions, please ask, but also just to get some nominations today from maybe 3/4 the most members to sit on the task and finish group, which we're hoping will start probably within the next month or so. And the idea is potentially to have the report, which will go to cabinet round about November time. So it's going to be quite a, so it's not going to be too much time. You're going to be 3 to 4 meetings at the most.
Brilliant. Okay, I mean, that's really interesting, and thank you. It's sort of, just by way of illustration, where I'm a councillor in Corbridge, we've got three different people looking after public spaces with Parish Council, the County Council, and Carbon Homes. And often it's kind of, there are bits within bits that one organisation will do, another organisation will do a bit in the middle. Right. Some gardens, houses get done, some don't. Some, it is a very confusing situation. So I can understand the desire to get it clarified. Councillor Dale, have you got a question, or are you volunteering?
I think one of the big things to mentioning going back is, I think certainly open space is so important to our housing estates. But I would like to ask, going back, I think when we did LTR, and certainly when we did our stock transfer from Tynedale Council, we made sure that all the land went to the social housing, and at that time it was the Tynedale housing, and became ISTOS, now it became Carbon.
Yeah.
But they all have obviously part of the legal transfer will be within the asset transfer to the social housing provider at the time. However, in some spaces we also have green spaces which are part of 106 agreement, about which are not to do with affordable housing but to do with estates.
Yeah.
And those are causing problems everywhere, because the 106 agreement stated that, basically some of the 106 agreements didn't have legal documents behind them. And when the council, when the land or the housing was transferred, when the LGR, the transfer of those legal documents, a lot of them didn't happen. There's a lot of green space which is not being looked after because the council say they don't want to do it. Parish councils won't do it because it's not under their thing. So there's a real mess going on, and it is, and there's two bits, so maybe it's what we have as the housing provider for our land. But also there's a bigger picture about the other land, which has got 106, did have 106, but they weren't formalised legally, and they didn't transfer these LGR. And I think that's something, because it's going to hang on unless we put a stop to it and say it's like cutting down trees, you know, it's all kinds of things that need looking into. So you've got a really good can of worms there. And I think you can really expand it because it's something that needs to be looked at.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. Councillor Reid.
Yeah, I'm quite happy to volunteer
Great.
to do it. But there is a policy, and the policy was don't sell the land in front of the house, because when they cut the grass, it was, oh, you'd come off and go on again. So the policy that the Borough of Blythe Valley had was
Yeah.
on these open estates, it was open and they wanted to keep it open. And the only way they could keep it open was by retaining the land in front of the houses to cut the grass. So the policy was don't sell. So there is a policy. So, and that's, we're basically talking about right to buy here. We're not talking about stock transfer. There's people buying their individual houses in a row. And Blythe didn't want them to have a garden because it was going to cost us twice as much to cut the grass.
Yeah.
So if we're going to change it, that's fine, but there is a problem.
Yeah, no, I think that this is what's going to come out of this, isn't it? It'll be sort of where there are policies and where there are policy gaps and what to do if you want.
I'm not saying, sorry, Chair, I'm not saying the policy was written down.
Yeah.
Well, that was definitely what the council wanted.
Yeah, no, that's great. Thank you for volunteering. Councillor Carty.
Just one little thing on the policy, because I wasn't around when that policy or whatever was put in place, but I don't know, Jeff, maybe if you're on that, say, working group, is perhaps have something in like a condition if they do get the land, they've still got to keep it open, keep it tidy themselves. Do you know what I mean? So that the lawnmower doesn't have to go on and off, because some people will put
Yeah,
fences.
but sorry, Chair, but then what happens is if you do that, then somebody owns the land, they can't do anything with it. And we're cutting somebody else's grass, which is what we're trying to
Yeah.
stop.
All right.
And I guess this is these are precisely the issues that this is going to draw out, which is why it's important that there are some councillors on this task and finish group, because we have those, you know, live with some of those issues day to day when people contact us. So would anybody else like to?
Chair, just to come on, I agree with what you're trying to drive forward with, because I've had numerous conversations with Benicia and Ashington, and people that it must be a different policy there. They were eligible to buy the grassed area in front. What would normally happen is somebody would go across and put a little picket fence round to say this is my garden and plant the flowers, and it became a problem for the grass cutters. But prior to that, Benicia's policy was, well, if it's open, let's just cut it and let's keep it neat and tidy. But there has to be a responsibility, and there is a cost, like the chair said, for cutting the grass. So, yeah, I welcome it coming forward. Thank you.
Yeah, exactly the same issue in graveyards as well, I think. So volunteers. Okay, that's great, Councillor Lang, thank you, and Councillor Dale. So, and Mark Mather will be chairing it. So, and I think we're getting a reasonable spread across the county there as well. We've got somebody from the north, a couple of people from the sort of southeast-ish, and somebody from the west as well. So that's really good. I think we've even got a bit of political proportionality, so it's even better.
Check the names, Chair. I've got councillors Reid, Lang, Deal and Mather to chair.
Yeah, that's good. Great, that's excellent. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So the next item is, thank you, is the North East bus improvement plan. John, are you going to sort of introduce this?
I'll just say a few words of introduction. I mean, this is really a very, very good news story. You know, we bid into the DFT for this money, and I think this was through the LA7, and it was the biggest award in the country, 163 million. It's a game changer really for our rural bus services in particular, and supported bus services. At present, we spend about 2.2 million a year on supported bus services. This will allow us to at least double that and more. But Neil's got a presentation for you, I think. Am I right? I'm right, not Neil?
Yes.
Which shows the map, etc.
Waiting for the IT to work.
Thank you. As Councillor Riddle alluded to there, this is amazing news. It's fantastic. Biggest single award, and it is really transformational for the region. By way of context, pre-COVID, there was 154 million passenger journeys in the region in 2018-19. About 8.5 million of those journeys originated in Northumberland. And the reason why the bus network is so important is because only 68% of North East households have access to a car, lower than the national average. A large number of those journeys are to employment, as well as the network providing a vital role for social inclusion in terms of carrying our young people to schools, to shops, to health and key services. It's also part of the solution towards air quality and carbon reduction. And a point often overlooked is the role that bus companies play in employment. They are major employers with over 6,000 employers regionally, and in Northumberland as well. Arriva, with their 2 bus depots, are one of the largest private sector's employers. So what does that bus network look like in Northumberland? Well, pre-COVID, it looked like this. The map on the left is the commercial network, primarily operated by Arriva. They were operated without any funding or support from Northumberland County Council. They're the profitable services that the bus company operated. They were primarily focused in southeast Northumberland, which has, for the large part, has excellent transport links. And then what we used is the map on the right there is the support services network. And we used our spend, which last year totaled 2.2 million, to kind of expand the reach of those commercial services, particularly out to the west and into the north, where there's a sparsity of commercial services, providing key links. So there's a range of different services. Some services we're funding entire services. In other areas, we're funding enhancements or extensions to existing services. And then in other places, for some of our smaller communities, there are things like 1 day a week shopper services. So what does this funding allow us to do? I mean, again, as Councillor Riddle alluded to, this was a competitive bidding process. We bid as a region and through the JTC, and we were successful in securing as a region 163 million. That's split very roughly 50-50 between capital schemes, primarily road space reallocation, and revenue schemes, which incorporates funding for enhancements to the bus services and fares initiatives that I'll talk through later. Initially, we were meant to get this money over a year ago with a 3-year funding window between 2022-23 and 24-25. However, the confirmation of this funding was held up due to a Cabinet Office review of ministerial budgets, and we've only just recently got confirmation of that funding. So whilst the funding hasn't been reduced, we do now only have 2 years in which to spend it. Although we are lobbying DFT to expand that funding period to allow us to spend it over 3 years, as I think that's the optimal solution for us in terms of giving these service enhancements the best opportunity to become established and commercially viable. So in terms of support services, what we're looking to do is use the money to support the existing network, to reinstate services that have been cancelled or is it reduced, primarily as a result of the COVID pandemic. We have lost a number of key services. We have seen service frequency reductions in other services, and this money gives us the opportunity, where appropriate, to reinstate some of them. In other areas, we'll be looking at new services to include rural areas and tourist destinations, appreciating the importance of our tourist industry in the region. We're looking at increasing frequency, so perhaps, going from hourly to half hourly in key areas. And one of the areas often asked when we're being lobbied by town and parish councils is increasing operating hours. We have a lot of services that run off early evening, 6 or 7 o'clock at night. And there are these, extending operating hours to allow people to access the evening economy, allow people to take on shift work and get home from work, is quite a cost-effective use of this funding, because we don't need additional vehicles, we don't need additional drivers, we're just extending the operating day. As to what the scope of that and how many services we'll be able to enhance, improve. So it goes back to that first question, supporting the existing network. The bus industry has been very lucky in that DfT have supported it throughout this pandemic and continue to support it by allowing operators to claim revenue shortfall on existing services when compared to pre-COVID. So it's funding that revenue gap. However, that revenue funding is slated to end at the end of June, at which point the commercial network will have to stand on its own 2 feet. So we are fully expecting the major operators to perhaps come to us with further active reductions or service cancellations as a result of these services not being viable, because unfortunately patronage hasn't returned to pre-COVID levels. We're at about 84% of pre-COVID levels, and that's 16% reduction in patronage and the associated revenues. Unfortunately, turn a lot of those green services on the previous map into red. So we need to understand the scale of those cuts, and we will be recommending to the bus board that we address some of those concerns and then pick up the other bullets mentioned on that slide. The other raft of funding is fares initiatives. So we've got these services, but we've got to do something to get more bums on seats. So there's a whole raft of service interventions planned, fares initiatives planned, that will result in cash savings for the majority of bus users. We have an under 22 cap ticket, £1 single, £3 day ticket, and that's region wide. That's a game changer. Currently, if you're 18 and living in southeast Northumberland, you have to pay half there. So a ticket to Newcastle, for example, is £2.50 each way. This is taking it down to £1 or £3 for the day ticket. So it is a major saving. And the fact that we have enough money to extend that to under 22s, it means that not only are we making bus travel accessible to young people, we're also making it accessible to college age people, university age people, people doing apprenticeships, and people starting on their path to employment, whereby perhaps in the past transport costs have been a barrier to accepting low-paid employment. This addresses some of them, and likewise with the adult day tickets. So an Arriva day ticket in Northumberland currently ranges from £5.50 to £7.50. So there is a saving there for most bus users. And in addition to the adult and children ticket, we have the interventions, for example, the care leavers concessionary ticket. This is something that we were discussing even before the BSIP funding as part of our care leavers pledge. And what we're effectively talking about doing there is issuing all care leavers with an annual bus pack, entitling them to free travel for that year. And again, take our kids for free. That's an initiative that was piloted during the summer holidays last year and during Easter, and it allows us to allows a fair, well, it's not even a fair paying adult, allows an adult to take up to 3 kids up to 11 years old for free on busing during school holidays. So it just allows parents to access social interactions, educational establishments, museums, the wall and stuff at a relatively low cost again, whereby in the past the cost would have maybe been a barrier. So to oversee all this and to just ensure it's not me sitting in a darkened room spending all this money, we're proposing the establishment of a local bus board chaired by our portfolio holder, Councillor Riddle, with representation proposed from the 5 area LACs, as well as external partners such as maybe NALC, the VCS, and we propose to invite the bus operators along with those meetings to answer questions, to be held to account, to be an active partner as we work to improve these services. That's includes everything I've got to say, and happy to take any questions.
Great, and thank you very much. That was very interesting. Before we open it up to questions, Janice, is there anything you'd like to add? No.
No, only to say that apologies, we're kind of out of sync. We wouldn't normally have brought this in as a cabinet report. It was just we were conscious that this was an area of work that you'd asked us to look at. You can hear that Simon, that Neil said that we've been waiting a year for this funding. We wanted to couch that supported bus discussion in the context of this good news rather than thinking about it in the context of the past. So apologies that it's a bit, and we'll pledge to bring regular items to scrutiny that are not that this is, it was just a bit of a loss in time.
That's great, thank you. And we'll circulate the presentation and the next presentation after the meeting. We'll start questions then. Councillor Cole.
First of all, I just want to say well done. One thing I'm really pleased about is actually the reduction in the cost of a bus price for a young person under the age of 22, because normally people, there's a rule of thumb, 18 university, 24 when you finish. So, it's a pity you couldn't extend it to 24. He has me pushing my luck. Yeah, he has me pushing my luck, but I always advocate on behalf of young people, right? But well done. So maybe next year it might be 24, but try your best. But well done.
Neil, you said that the bus recovery grant money is going to run out in June. How much of the BSIP money is going to be used to plug the gap, and how fully will the gap be plugged by doing that?
That's the great unknown. Bus companies will have to determine not only what services are commercial and what are loss making, which is easy enough to do. They'll also have to determine a risk appetite, whether they're willing to take on a particular risk for a period of time in the hope that a service will recover. I'm confident that the cuts won't be extreme in Northumberland, is what we're being told, but the proof of the pudding will be when the registration documents arrive in my mailbox and we actually see that what that means. And whilst I say they won't be extreme, there will still be communities affected one way or another. And it also comes down to when we go out to tender for these services, how reasonable the operators are when it comes to bidding for work. Will they bid sensibly, or will they see this as an opportunity to recoup some of the losses they've made in the last few years?
Thank you.
Just sort of when you were in those discussions with an operator about a certain route, is there a fairly sort of open book approach to it in terms of if you're making decisions about spending public money on supporting a effectively commercial service, do you have all the information you need to be able to do that? Absolutely, we wouldn't hand out money without the evidence. So if, for example, someone came to us and said this is loss making, we want to see patronage data, we want to see costing data, and to be honest, all the operators have been really forthcoming with that. What the enhanced partnership does, which has been created to access this funding, is it places a requirement on the bus companies to supply that information. So in the past, this has been done ad hoc. That's now a requirement of them to do that. They did, yeah.
It was just, Neil, it's fair to say that when we're commissioning a bus service, a supported bus service, however it's been generated, it is open to a kind of procurement process that's competitive. So it's not a case of if Arriva's lost a commercial service, de facto we go back to Arriva to just give them the money. It's part of a commercial tender then, so that's fair to say, isn't it?
And for the most part, we're allowed by legislation to spend 25% of the funding on de minimis awards, and that is a direct award. The remaining 75% would be through procurement. But like Janice says, it might be that we ask the weaver her price, but if we don't think that's fair, we go out to test the marketplace. So there is that kind of checks and balances that does exist.
I think it's worth remembering it's an extra 6.8 million, isn't it?
It
You
is.
know, it's, even if we do get some, we'll lose some, we're gonna have plenty of money to plug in the gap, in my opinion, anyway.
Although buses they are costly.
Yeah, they are costly, but yeah.
In terms of the funding, a big chunk for capital, a big chunk for revenue. Can you sort of describe how how it will be used? I mean, obviously revenue is going to largely go for supporting sort of services and the sort of things we've just been talking about, but how will the capital money be used?
The capital money is primarily going to be used in Tyne-and-Wear. It's the capital monies exist to address things like pinch points and delays in the bus network.
Yeah.
And it's fair to say that most of those delays are felt most in Tyne-and-Wear. In fact, as a Northumberland resident, one of the best things you can do to improve journey times between Northumberland and Newcastle is to do something, for example, around Gosford, which is the major pinch point. So I don't think we are too upset at the lion's share of that money being earmarked for Tyne-and-Wear. There are a number of schemes, smaller schemes, planned for Northumberland. They're being led by colleagues in highways, but they include things like intelligent traffic light systems that equip transponders on buses, so as the buses approach the lights, they can go to green if it's safe to do so, to speed the flow of public transport through those lights, and one of those schemes planned for Morpeth. We also have some road widening schemes, one in Blythe and two in Bramlington. Once again, it's not road reallocation, it's putting an extra lane on the outside of a roundabout to remove the buses from those queues and again, speed up those journey times. And there is pot of money as well available for infrastructure improvements to things like bus shelters and interchanges as well.
So, we'll probably bring another report back through around capital, because that's the bit that we're still working through, so we can and the bus board will be kept informed of that capital investment as well.
Great, thank you.
Those couple of interventions are just at the design stage at the moment, so there's nothing formal to bring to you, but once the schemes have been designed, there will be the appropriate consultation.
Right, thank you. Councillor Gallagher.
Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you very much for the report. And every time I've had a conversation where you've been very clear and precise and professional. Thank you for that. Just going back to a meeting that we had on the 24th of June last year, we did have a discussion around the 3-year government window, funding of window. So you're saying that that's kind of reduced now from 3 to the 2-year. And I just wonder what issues that's developed and what's that going to give you. And you know, in your presentation, you're going to support the existing routes and develop new services and new routes, increase their frequencies. And you kind of referred to rural on a lot in your presentation. Well, not the last LAC, but the LAC before, the leader of the council referred to Newbiggin, Ashington, Blythe, Camas, Lamo, all being rural areas. So I want that to be noted, that, you know, we have our own rural areas where we've got reduced services. And as much as I welcome all of the services going to the west and north, you have to remember that we are rural as well. The other thing was that obviously as we're moving into a climate change and we're going to be using more electric levels, there's an additional cost there. What's the reflection on that as we drive those programs forward? Because the further the routes go, the more issues you'll have around the electric. So it's tied up with the electric chargers in those particular areas.
Are you in respect of the bus network?
Yes.
I think the technology isn't quite there yet to do long distance bus services electric, although things are moving on at a pace. So what we're initially going to specify in the tender documents, and this is a regional decision, is a minimum of a Euro 6 standard vehicle. So it's still a diesel vehicle, but reduced emissions. We have been successful, separate to this, in securing some funding regionally for 60 electric vehicles, including a number of those vehicles based at the Arriva depot in Blyth. So what that will do is that will pay for the infrastructure upgrades at Blyth, and it will give Blyth their first set of electric vehicles. So that takes off a lot of the initial costs, but it brings it that much closer towards there being a commercial case for the bus operators to invest in that. They lend themselves to South East Northumberland, the Blyth and Mobus into Newcastle and back. They work quite well in electric vehicles, and that's something that's being explored now. Your main arterial routes like your X18, X15, your Berwick to Newcastle. I think it's fair to say we're a good few years off being able to electrify those routes. Although there are possible mitigating factors, things like opportunity charging, whereby at certain interchanges you can have the charging built into the ground, so the bus, it's same with your phone charges on a stand. So I think all these things are being explored. It's just waiting for that tipping point for there to be a strong enough commercial case. And unfortunately, because of the rise in electricity prices, that's getting a bit further away than it was perhaps a couple of years ago. But it is coming, and in our lifetime we will be electrifying this year, or hydrogen.
Just as a reflection between the 3 and the 2 years, we've lost a year of funding. So how does that reflect on the 2 years that we've got remaining with it?
I think it provides me with a bit of a problem, and we are pushing the DFT to kind of allow us to spend it beyond 24-25 for that additional year to kind of reinstate the 3-year spend period. Bear in mind we're already into year 2, and I've got to wait till June to understand what the commercial network's going to look like before I can start commissioning services. And I think the longer period by which we can support services, the better, in terms of encouraging uptake and it being a reliable service. So if I'm only going out a tender for 18 months as opposed to 2.5 years, I do think it will show at the other end with regards to the viability of those contracts.
Yeah, just to elaborate on that, the reason why I asked that is if we deal with policies and budgets around the levelling up money always seems to come through late with a fast and a hard deadline. And my concern is, money's welcome to improve any services around Northumberland. But if we are time restraint and we don't get that money spent in a wise way rather than a rushed way, I don't particularly think that the government will give an extension to it, because they never ever have on anything else.
I think just to come in, I think the distinction, and I agree with you, Councillor Gallagher, I think you're right, we sometimes get hamstrung by, we get delays, sometimes with some of the funding coming to us, but the timelines by which we deliver stays the same. The trick we might have here, the hope we might have here is it's different between capital and revenue. Capital, they want it out the door and spent by a certain timeline. Revenue, we're hoping, and it is a hope and an anticipation, that if we say we've commissioned the work within the 2 years, that it goes beyond the 2 years, the work is still committed, it's still, we're still effectively spent, if you see what I mean. That allows us that scope to perhaps lengthen some of those contracts beyond the 2 years. So that's kind of the premise that we're working on, but it is something that we're having to work through with DFT. But you can see the logic that would hopefully land, that they're still getting the money out the door, as it were, because it's been commissioned, but it's allowing us that extra length of time to make sure the services get established as much as we can. But we are still in that discussion.
It's just basically my concerns of my experience of external funding coming in to do something, a project, and that's a hard and fast deadline. So fingers crossed that you get what you want. But
I think it's an age-old problem, isn't it? Government's always slow making its mind up and then in a hurry to get things done. So it's sort of, but I think what we can do as a committee is we can make the point that, we support all the efforts, all the lobbying efforts to encourage government to provide an extension to allow us to spend the money wisely. It's important to note that the amount of money isn't being reduced. It's just being squeezed in terms of the timescale to spend it. I think we'll make a note of that. Sure, that be useful. So that's great. Thank you very much, Councillor Dale.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your report. I just say 2 things. I am specifically at the beginning, I think the age going on about rural bus services and the subsidised ones. And that's why I think, in the end, I think, it's very good you brought it here. I do know that one of my bus services was subsidised, not on here. Whether I've made them use it, therefore it doesn't need any subsidy, I don't know. But it's an adapt service which goes from Winstall through to Stocksfield, and then to Hexham, and then comes back again. So if you could check that out, I would hate it not to be on here and this to be gospel and disappears.
It would disappear. I believe that I think there's about 4 dialect schemes that adapt run. 2 of them they actually run themselves without support.
Oh, good, so we had
Yeah.
this threat, you will lose it, so it's worth all that.
They get support from us in terms of we reimburse the cost of the journeys, and the costs are quite considerable. So I think the
Yeah.
money they get from us to reimbursement of ticket fares covers a lot of those costs.
So should it be on this list?
No, they
Oh,
don't
fine,
get
no, that's fine, I was going to say. I don't know if anybody else is missing off this list, but it might be worth asking all members to have a look, because if it is going to be gospel for more, then it's something that, everybody should have sight of maybe. And then just going back, thank you, and I'm glad we're getting some money, and it's all good news, except there's 1 or 2 things I would like to know what the board is going to do. One of the areas which I think is quite interesting is at the beginning, they were saying, I think we had 63% of the people in the North East who are in car ownership. So it'd be interesting to find out, because we are looking, I know where, Councillor Gallagher's mentioning about rural areas, including Ashington and everything else, but then the far outreach rural areas. But it would be quite interesting to find out how many people in, you might call it hinterland, and then coming into more central rural, if you want to call it that. What's the division in car ownership then? So we know that actually if we're looking at inequalities, that there's an opportunity to fill that gap, especially in the right out in the really rural areas. I mean, we get the bus once a month from what's called Jackson, goes one way. But a lot of the bus services actually don't allow people to go to work. And, there's all this, and to be quite honest, I've actually challenged, I've been around one small village and said, where do you all work? And only 1 actually went to the station. They went north, south, east, west, you name it. So a bus service is terribly hard. Actually, you can take it to a hub and then they can get from hub onwards. But they're never ever going to actually, reach everybody's destination for them, because it's impossible really. So it's just a matter of maybe when you're looking at the bus, what you're actually trying to do to the rural areas, whether you're asking them to have a day out in the shops or whatever, all kinds of things, or go to, whatever. But it might be good to understand why we're actually putting the bus service on.
Yeah.
So we make sure that we broaden the whole scope. Does that make sense? It's not easy, but, people can't use it as an everyday bus to go to work and come back in the far rural areas, because actually it doesn't always work for other people.
Great, thank you very much.
Just to say, can I just say, hydrogen bus services are being developed on behalf of the government down in Darlington. So, it's on its way, that's the easiest thing. But I wouldn't mind about the rural areas and the concept about that.
Yeah, I think Councillor makes an important point about where obviously that adapt service is being well used in the community. As this plan develops, perhaps you could keep us sort of all councillors in obviously all across the whole region informed, so that we can do whatever little we can to influence people to use those services and just promote them locally. And I think that would make a contribution, because Councillor Dale's obviously done a great job in Stocksfield on that particular service. And so yeah, Councillor Reid and then Councillor Morgan.
Thanks. And first of all, it's been a very interesting conversation so far, and because I wasn't sure what this was doing here, because I can't really scrutinise a report that there isn't anything we can change. It's just like a statement of fact, isn't it, really? So I wasn't, but I'm glad that people ask some probing questions, because I was a bit worried that it was just going to be, like, what's this doing? Anyway, so enough said. Very good. Glad we've got the money. Couple of things. The second recommendation, I think we need to add that it would also include the cabinet member or who's responsible for this, so it shouldn't just be the officers that decide and accept this, it needs to be, so the cabinet member needs to be added to that. And you're talking about the bus board, and I think you said it was going to have cabinet members on it and the chairs of the LACs, was that right?
And representation from the left, not necessarily the
I
chair.
was going to say, because it'll have to be, if it's going to be, it's going to have to be politically balanced. It's basically what it's going to have to be. And if you had the chairs on, it wouldn't be politically balanced. So you need to keep an eye on that. So you might have to change the report in the sense if that's, I can't remember whether that's written there, but it will have to have, because only less than half of the council is conservative and more than half of the chairs are. So, you know, you need to just bear that in mind.
I mean, Jeff, we can certainly look at, and it might be that it's a couple from some LACs and one from other, you know, I think
Well,
we can be fluid about
getting
how
a
we get a
representative.
good balance. We want
That's-
to get
that's-
we want to get
that's
geographical
absolutely fine.
balance as well as a political balance.
But if it's an official,
Yep,
if
absolutely.
it's an official council thing, it has to be politically balanced.
Go for it.
So, you know, well done and just keep going. But I got me, when I was sitting out there waiting for this meeting to start, I looked at the money that we were going to get, which we haven't got yet. So I took 22 months and divided the amount of money we get by 22, and it basically works out at £1 per person per year, per month. So it's like, really? So I know you're going to make best use of it, and that's absolutely fine. But if we're going to make proper change, if we're going to have a proper, viable, sustainable bus network in the vastness of Northumberland, then we're going to need more money than that.
It is 6.8 million, whichever way you look at the share for us. And, you know, that those fares that we're proposing, I think they are, you know, very reasonable.
No, I'm sorry, Chair, all I'm saying is that if you divide the amount of money by the number of months we've got to spend it, it's 350 odd thousand.
We don't know how many months we've got, Jeff, at the
And
moment.
there are 350 odd thousand people live in Northumberland, so it's a pound a head per month, that's, you know. Just trying to get it into perspective. If you think about how much money per head the population London gets to move people about, it's an absolute disgrace. I'm not saying it's not welcome, I'm not saying we shouldn't do it, and I'm really pleased it's happening, but if you divide one by the other, it's about £5 a head in London, I think.
Well, I think the challenge is going to be to use this money wisely, which we thought we will, and also to use it to encourage commerciality of services, so that actually if you can get people to alter their mindsets. And one of the things that struck me was encourage the thing about school holidays and getting kids onto buses and school holidays. You're creating something, so it's a bit like getting kids to play sport when they're young. It's something that will stay with them for life, the idea of
You like watching it later in life.
public transport. Watching the buses go by. Nick, before I forgot about Jeff, he asked if he could make a comment, and then I'll come to you.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm not part of the committee, so allow me to make a comment. My question really is about senior citizens, and actually what Jeff has said is come into it as well, because out of your population, of course, a third or roughly a third of our population are senior citizens who automatically get free transport anyway.
Yeah, I've got
So
my
you can
pass
take
if
that
you
one,
want to stay.
add that to your fees. But you haven't mentioned senior citizens at all. Now, when I go on the bus, which I do occasionally, I look around and I see a lot of people who have got the same sort of white hair as me. So where does this fit into the plan? Who's paying for the senior citizens free service? Is that part of the money that we're doing? Or is it another thing? And what proportion of bus journeys are by senior citizens?
Good questions. Every time an older person or a disabled person, pass holder, gets on the bus, Northumberland County Council reimburses the bus company a proportion of an adult fare. On a basis that bus companies will be no worse or no better off than if the scheme didn't exist. So in terms of who's paying for it, it's ourselves. We're paying for it. You're right, we can't do better than free, so there's no fares initiatives for older people. But all the enhancements we're talking about for bus services, more travel options, later travel options, will affect all people. I'm glad you raised the issue about all people, because actually one of the problems that we've had with the network, and I mentioned, I think that the network, only about 84% of pre-COVID patronage is using the network at the moment. That figure for concessionary pass holders is much lower. It's in the 70s. So what we've done there is we've lost, whether it's they've lost faith in the network or they do no longer feel it's safe. But older people that used to use the bus network in significant numbers, and in a lot of ways underpinned the daytime services on those services. You know, the scholars and the workers morning either end or through the day, you know, they supported those. They're not returning in the same numbers. So we are going to have to do something about promotion and marketing and try to encourage them back on the bus network. And, you know, linked to the point that Councillor Reid made, we do have a marketing and promotion budget. And the point you made about, you know, using members, using town and parish councils to kind of, you know, promote the use of these services. So I think it's about us providing the materials and then using all the, you know, the networks we've got to kind of.
I think it was just the word, sorry, I think it's the word use it or lose it. It was a bit.
I was trying to avoid
But
using that,
the
but,
plug was probably better.
but yes, particularly when it comes to these 2 years funded interventions, we'll put the bus on, but ultimately, at the end of the 2 years, whether or not it's still there is dependent on it covering its costs.
Yeah.
So there is an element of use it or you lose it, and we have to. And I think an important part of that is being transparent with people. You know, telling people, well, there's so many people need this, how many's using it, and using those avenues of town and parish councils to encourage that. And with the take the kids for free, last year, that's when that scheme ran during the summer holidays, it was take the kids for free with any fare paying adult. That's been changed this year to take the kids for free with any adults, to recognise the fact that, you know, older people do sometimes have caring responsibilities for grandkids and stuff. And again, it allows you to take your 3 grandkids out for free.
But I want to.
Simon, sorry, apologies, I should have introduced you. Did you want to comment on that item, or do you want to say something?
I want to say something later, but.
Okay, I'll let Councillor Morpeth go now, and then, yeah, brilliant, thank you.
Okay, thanks. I've got 2 questions. Talking about bus usage levels, there's a table in appendix 1 showing bus usage from last financial year, 22-23,
Yeah.
and also 2019-2020 as a baseline.
Pre-COVID, yeah.
But was that pre-COVID? Because COVID did start early in 2020. And I'm just wondering if these figures were affected by COVID, in which case possibly the drop in usage has been worse than it appears.
Quite possibly. I think the year before that, patronage was around 9 million. So I think the fact that I think COVID broke on the and we started seeing the effects late February, early March. So I think that 2019-20 baseline does have some slight effect with regards to the pandemic. When we went into lockdown, was it the 18th of March or something?
23rd, yeah. 23rd.
So we could be at less than 80% pre-pandemic usage if you compared it to the 2018-19.
Yes. But that's offset slightly by the fact that the network's contracted. So we have lost some services, we have lost some frequency. So there will be a drop off in patronage as a result of the services not being there. So for example, whilst patronage is in there, it's about 83-84% of pre-COVID. In terms of the network mileage, it's about 90%. So we have lost 10% of pre-COVID mileage as a result of the operator seeking efficiencies.
Okay, thanks.
Keep working on.
Could I also ask about biogas powered buses? I know there's towns with buses powered by biogas made from sewage and slurry from farms, which we've got lots of in North London. And I'm just wondering if you had looked into whether some of the routes which aren't suitable for electric buses might be suitable for biogas buses.
hydrogen's definitely being explored. Biogas, I'm not aware of any work in that, although I'm not the lead in that particular area. And certainly, I'll take it back and ask the question.
Thank you. Yeah, it'd be great if you could.
Can I just ask about the sort of the whole, the multimodal aspect of this is really good. The idea of people being able to do sort of multimodal journeys. They might sort of live outside of, just to give an example, a friend of mine who lives up in Sparty Lee, works on the quayside in Newcastle, drives down to Hexham Station, gets on the train, and then has to walk to the quayside. He might want to take his bike, or he might want to do the first bit on a bus, and very difficult to get bikes onto buses and often difficult to get them onto trains. So as we're sort of implementing and all of this and rolling it out, and as we're talking to the operators, could we do what we can to encourage them to sort of create space on their buses for bikes? Because then you will really, potentially increase the number of people that can use those services because they've got that last mile to travel or the first mile to travel.
Yes, that has been mentioned at the moment. Some bikes can use it, but it's in the same spaces for disabled users or people with prams. So it's very much on a first come, first served type of basis. We have in the past trialed like kind of bike racks on the back of vehicles along some of our tourist routes, and always keen to explore and make things more accessible. So yeah, those discussions will continue.
Right, Nick, did you just like your comments about the same sort of things?
It is, yeah, thanks. I think it's bikes are allowed on buses in the borders, I believe. Have you looked at other parts of the country to see how they're doing it?
No, not personally, no. I think if I'm honest.
Because you hear it a lot, don't you? A lot of people want bikes on buses. Some parts of the country are doing it. So is it perhaps another thing you might be able to look into?
Okay, great. Thanks, Councillor Dale.
Can I just make them back to Jeff's point? Your point about people dropping off the top end, there will be new people coming in. And it'd be quite interesting. I don't know how much advertising you do or promotion you do of the concessionary fare. You can now, and what you can achieve by signing up to concessionary fare at the age and everything else. And I just wondered how many people actually join concessionary fare each year. Or how many concessionary fares are taken out each year?
Each year I don't have the figures for, but what I do have the figures for is I think take-up's quite good. Most older people know when they get something for free.
Yeah.
So the take-up is excellent. But what I'm also aware is that in any given year, only about 50% of passes are used. So even though people will get the pass and have the ability to travel for free, they're not necessarily doing it for whatever reason.
It's nice to know that you can do it.
Yes.
Can I just start? I mean, it sounds awful, but I know we used to get the concessionary where the concessionary fares were used. It'd be quite interesting to see, I know, for instance, from my ward, they go flying along the A695, and there's a lot of them using concessionary fares, and probably from Corbridge, etc. How much actually used outside in the rural areas? I don't know, but it'd be quite interesting to see, if there's any possibility of actually understanding, because that gives you the age of people living in the rural areas. I don't know if you can do that. I mean, when they come by postcode, I'd have thought you could. I mean, if I said the one that I got was everybody on there, practically is on concessionary fare. Must be. In fact, all of them, I think, probably. So it'd be interesting if you sent it back up to John Bedlington. You might find there's a lot of people on concessionary fares coming from Bellingham to Hexham. I don't know, John will know that. But it'd be interesting to see where the concessionary fares are used and where they're not used.
It is possible. We do get data boardings by stop.
Yeah.
It would be quite an undertaking to do that analysis of all stops and percentage of older people using it.
Perhaps,
It's not
Councillor, if you've got a
straightforward.
specific area in mind, if you could sort of.
Well, I'll just
raise
have to
it
talk to Neil through
offline
it.
and
It's just
possibly
specific
do a
with
response.
the piece of board.
I think it's fair to say that, as Neil said earlier, that you tend to find there's periods of the day where different users are on the buses. So your commuters and your young people are on at the start and the tea time slots.
Yeah, different.
And then during the day, it tends to be your older people, so I think that's the generic.
Yeah.
What we're trying to do is obviously mix, is get as many people as possible, use it for all sorts of purposes throughout the day. But that is kind of, that, so if you're on the bus in the daytime, it is more likely that it's probably populated with, other older people.
Yeah. Eileen, did you have something?
I just wanted to make a comment on getting elderly back on the buses. To be honest with you, it's not just the bus sector, it's the voluntary sector. I run community projects and they're not even coming in there. All I thought I had to do was open the door and people would flood back in, and particularly the elderly, and they haven't. And I think there is still a fear factor there. And I think they've just found different ways to live.
Yeah. Simon, sorry, I didn't introduce you at the beginning, but Simon's our new Director of Regeneration.
So Executive Director of Place and Regeneration, so day 8, met some, but not everyone in the room. Look forward to working with everyone. The couple of points I wanted to make have kind of been made, but I just wanted to build on the one around patronage and making the case to government. So notwithstanding, we've got 2 years, hopefully 3, if we can lobby to spend this, but actually the more people who use it, the more powerful and persuasive a case we can make as Northumberland and we as a region can make. It's very difficult for government to then turn that down if we've seen a substantial rise in patronage. And I think there's a question for the bus board, as you established that, about how to best communicate with people. So the point about reluctance to use public transport post-pandemic, what is behind that reluctance to get involved in community groups, as Councillor just made the point. Is there something about research opportunity here for us? What is stopping people from using things? How do we get people to use them as much as possible? Because it's in all of our interest to use them as much as possible. And the big prize a couple of years down the line, so I've just come from the West Midlands where we've done our 3rd devolution deal there. And we've had the opportunity shown to the West Midlands and to Greater Manchester around a single place-based settlement in the next comprehensive spending review. The ability there to mix money between different lines, so it's not spend it on this and only this on this deadline, but actually if it matters to us in the region, it matters to us in Northumberland in particular, could we mix money between things because they make a difference to our communities and to our residents. So there's something about using the sophisticated argument, I suppose, of Neil's point around border crossing, so into the Tyne and Wear area in particular. How do we ensure that something that's important to Newcastle is important to us and vice versa? So actually we're saying the same thing to government at the same time. And just one brief example from the West Midlands, and I'll promise this will be the last time I mention it. We did some work on Sprint, which is like a bus rapid transit system across the conurbation, so from Walsall where I was all the way to the airport, which is in Solihull, through Birmingham. And actually that is good quality buses. So the capital money was spent on pinch points, but also the fleet. So hydrogen fleet, pick up the point that was made earlier, 20% more use because it feels a nice service to use. It doesn't feel like a bus. It feels like a tram. Now I know that's in an urban area. It's a different proposition, but it proves the point. If you get the quality right and the pinch points right, and you get connections from places people want to go from and to and through, actually, if we get that and the communications right, we've got a really powerful case to make in a couple of years' time, hopefully 3 years' time, if we get that extra time from the government to spend money to actually show we can do it. And if we can, the rest of the country can. So we should be in a place that says, you know what, keep investing in us and we'll see even more return for the government. Thank you.
And I think it's a really important point about the comfort and the use. I commuted from Aldridge to Birmingham for 3 years on a cattle truck, and it was horrendous. It's cold in the winter and hot in the summer, and it needs to be. But buses actually these days are great. They're comfortable. You've got Wi-Fi, and they're not as noisy as they used to be. Great.
Can I just come up and bring something else? I think in your presentation, you mentioned something about highway improvements and also about bus shelters. Who would take ownership of the bus shelters? And the reason why I'm bringing it up is that Ashington have bought their own, maintain them and look after them. Newbiggin, a lot of years ago, when would have been a smaller council, went the expense of buying bus shelters in because there was a bus route that went through one part of Newbiggin. Arriva decided there wasn't enough profit in there, withdrew that service, and a small town council went the expense a high percentage of expense to them. So how do we tie this in? And the reason why I bring that up is if you're going to buy all these bush shelters for a rural area, it's very unfair that my rural area, now that I've been informed by the leader, is that we've had to buy ours. So what's the way up there? Who takes responsibility for these?
Well, the line in the budget around improvements to infrastructure for per se bush showers, that's not restricted to rural areas, it's for the region. We're in a unique position in that in all the other parts of the region, the county councils or nexus own the infrastructure. Here in Northumberland, we don't own the infrastructure, we transfer them to the town and parish councils. So any improvements with regards to that would be in discussions with the town and parish councils.
Yeah. And the ownership would fall on to those for future if an agreement's made between.
Yes, if I say
and-
you begin, there was a bush shower form down and we used some decent money to replace it. Decent money would fund it. The town council would take over the asset and the responsibility for any future liabilities attached to that.
Yeah, but you can see where the argument's coming from.
Definitely.
That I, as a council, decided that they needed improvement and the old age and bush showers, that their own expense, they put them on. Right, thank you. That's Jeff.
Great. Well, I think that sort of wraps up that item, which was absolutely fascinating. So thank you very much. And I think we talked in the pre-meeting about sort of possibly something coming back once things are bedded down, and we can sort of look at how it's all working. So we'll sort of look forward to that. And good luck with it all, and good luck with your lobbying to get the time period extended. So.
Chair, are we recommending in the vote?
Oh, yes, absolutely. I think that's really important.
Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
About the addition of the portfolio holder.
Yeah.
Needs to be politically balanced, and also the points about government lobbying, and creating personal adjustments and insurance for bicycles.
Bicycles in. Great, thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thanks. Yes. So the next item is an update on the library service. I think, Jeff, are you going to introduce this and then pass it on?
Thank you very much. The purpose of this is to give you an update of what's happened and what is happening with the library service. I'm always delighted, I'm very proud of our library service. I think it's actually second to none in the whole country. I was at a conference recently with the LGA and I heard what we were doing compared to what other people were doing throughout the country. And I think we were certainly amongst the premier library services in the country. We've got 30 libraries. We also have a schools service, a mobile library, and a prisons. And we have been following through the hub situation that we want to establish, in having a number of hub libraries that we use to distribute books. But we're also working very closely with our communities together, people to have hubs in our libraries. I won't say much more except to say that I've been saying ever since I've taken over this portfolio that we are not going to close any libraries, and we haven't closed any libraries, unlike virtually every other council in the country. In fact, over the last year or so, we have opened a new library at Newbiggin, a new one at Ponteland, we have reopened South Beach, and we've got a smashing new library in Morpeth as well. So I think I've set the scene, and I'll let Karen actually give you the details and take you through the report, which I hope you all managed to read and see the good news that's in there. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. Thank you, Chair. Just a bit of advice, actually. How do I get this presentation? Is it on its way? Oh, I have to set it up there. Okay. Is it just up arrow to move on? Down arrow. Okay, thanks for clarifying that. Thanks, everyone. My name is Karen Lempton. I'm interim head of service, and at the moment I have a role within the library service, and my colleague with me today is Alison Peden, who's the library service manager. So thanks to Jeff for his introduction into the the library service. I have a few slides to share with you all today, and a little bit of background to go through some brief historical context, to have a look at what we've achieved over the last year, and very much to focus on the next year ahead for us as well. So the library service has been on a bit of a journey. In 2015, the library service was transferred out of NCC control and was transferred to a leisure trust, a charitable trust. It returned back to local authority control quite quickly the following year, and started to go through a transformation programme in 2017. One of the key parts of that transformation programme was a significant resident survey which took place in 2020, which established some 3 key priorities which are outlined there for you. So strengthening the core service, to establish the hub libraries within key localities, and to expand upon region partnerships. And those 3 things remain very much our focus in 2023 and beyond, but with an agenda to build strongly upon them. So the service transformation programme commenced. Alison, next to me today, who's supporting me, is our library service manager, and Alison's introduction to the service was very much part of that transformation. You'll see the journey that the staff have been on, being transferred out of local authority control and then back in. And very much as part of that transformation programme has been a journey to really change the culture within libraries, and to also win the hearts and minds of staff, to bring them along on our journey of transformation. So just a little reminder for us all in relation to how our library service links into the corporate plan. I'll always call libraries the original community hubs, because I think they are. They've been in existence for a long, long time, since the 18th century, since the 19th century, and the Public Libraries Act of 1850. So they've always been part of the community. They're very much a stalwart of what we see around us, and part of the business as usual. But in terms of what they demonstrate and what they deliver to the communities, they are social networks that provide information, learning, advice and guidance, companionship and support. And they very much have evolved with the current times. We have a big digital agenda with libraries now to enhance the digital knowledge and skill set across our communities. Not everybody is confident and competent in that area, and Alison will touch upon some customer feedbacks later on in the presentation, which will really very much outline that. So progress today, we had some key objectives from 2020, which have preoccupied and taken up the last 2 to 3 years with our continued progress and continued journey of improvement. So we've established our 5 hub libraries, and they were very much the key theme that came out of the survey that took place in 2020. The Berwick, Blythe, Cramlington, Hexham and Morpeth. So you'll see that there is that spread across our county of Northumberland. Our hub libraries are accessible. They are on good transport links if people choose to drive, public transport, or even walk to them. They're very much in key localities. They are flexible and open, welcome spaces, warm spaces more than ever in 2022, 2023 and beyond. Their priorities and prevalence have risen in the current cost of living crisis. We are delighted to have relocated our Morpeth Library into the new Leisure Centre, a flagship development for the county. Opened on the 3rd of April 2023, and we're very much enjoying that new space, as are our customers, which was evidenced in our first operational week in Morpeth, which over the course of that week from the 3rd of April saw we issued just under 1,700 issues in that library that week, and we had 185 new members join, and we also saw 63 renewals of membership. So our lapsed members were reinvigorated and re-inspired to once again connect with the library service, inspired by a flagship development and some promotional and advertisement around that particular site opening. So our continued progress, we have increased our press reader sessions, we've increased e-audio downloads, and incredibly, I think this is a remarkable statistic, our volume of in-person and virtual events has really significantly risen. Our in-person events have started again post-COVID. It was interesting to hear some comments and dialogue from members today about post-COVID confidence, and that certainly is an issue. I do feel that our libraries established as warm, safe, comfortable spaces, have very much been able to build upon trying to strengthen that community confidence and engage with people, bringing them back into in-person events in the library. But certainly there's been some great practice which we are able to continue to develop post-COVID, and that is the virtual events as well. Because very much so, the library service, as I'm sure everybody knows, did not stop in COVID. Our remit changed and transformed, and we delivered companionship calls, wellbeing calls. Our library service and the staff really demonstrated an extreme level of agility to continue to have that community role to play and to make a difference to the everyday residents' lives. Something that I'm absolutely delighted to talk about today is the social prescribing scheme, which connects residents to the Reading for Wellbeing programme. This is an outstanding piece of work which has taken place in libraries. I had the pleasure of attending a celebration event at the Word in South Shields in February, which was an event to champion the Reading for Wellbeing programme. What this programme is, it is an alternative route to healing and therapy, to wellbeing and health via reading. It really does exactly what it says on the tin. And our social prescribing network, rather than possibly a traditional or an established route of a doctor prescribing medication, will prescribe Reading for Wellbeing and connect those individuals to reading companionship groups which are hosted across our libraries in the county. We have two staff who are absolute stars and so passionate about the Reading for Wellbeing network. At the event at the Word in South Shields, we came together with some regional colleagues who also deliver this programme. But the real powerful part of that day was the in-person testimonials from people who had been prescribed the Reading for Wellbeing programme and what it had meant to them. It very much resonated with me that a lot of people were talking about COVID isolation and lack of confidence post-COVID and how they had been in their homes for a long time and now wanted to reconnect and come back outside. And the Reading for Wellbeing programme had significantly played a strong part in the rebuilding of those individuals' confidence. It was quite a humbling day and very much, if you ever need to have a reminder about why you come to work every day, that was definitely one of those events that I certainly enjoyed. The library service has done some excellent outreach work over the course of the last year, very much connecting with the voluntary sector and doing some excellent work with town councils. Alison and her team worked with Hexham Town Council to provide a warm welcome to a number of Ukrainian refugees who were displaced from their own country last year, making them part of the community, establishing English classes in the library, which have been a real success and certainly would go a long way to making people who are in that simply dreadful situation of having to leave your home country at very short notice feel very welcome in their new home. Staffing levels are slowly improving. Staffing levels have gone back to, we have about 62 contingency of staff, and prior to those changes that I mentioned, prior to the transfer out of local authority control, we had around about 90 staff who were part of the service. So we've made slow progress to rebuild staffing levels. And another collaboration partnership is the business and intellectual property centres, which are located in our, I think it's Morpeth, Berwick and Hexham libraries. Strategically placed, so we complement the offer from Advanced Northumberland, and they are there to offer business advice to anybody who has an interest to grow their own business, to be self-employed, to step into that very brave new world, I would say, in the current climate of being your own boss. So the last financial year, the team made 325 connections via that network. I'd just like to hand over to Alison for a moment because we want to share some feedback and testimonials from the people who used the service today, which I think they can't be here. But we have their words, and I think their words are very powerful to demonstrate the reach and impact of the library service. So I'll just ask Alison to maybe elaborate a little bit more about those experiences.
Thank you, Karen. So these are the words of our customers, and I think obviously the thing that will strike you about the first one, a customer who lives in Norfolk. What we have found with the development of our virtual offer is that we now have a global reach. So, there is an expat community out there that if we're delivering anything about Northumberland, you know, it's very welcome and, you know, it sells the county abroad. A further example of that was the Hadrian's Wall 1900 exhibition that was co-curated with our archives colleagues. It was on display at Holt Whistle with an accompanying tour. A couple from Hull spotted it, booked to come on the tour and ended up spending a few days in the county, obviously spending money and enjoying, you know, all that the county had to offer. So, you know, just an example of how one thing leads to another and we can work together to generate interest and more impact for the economy. So that has also been tied in with some of our digital inclusion work. So these hybrid events actually brings people into the branch, you know, maybe if they haven't got the technology at home and they can watch it in company, but it links them in without having to travel maybe to a branch where the author is appearing. It's also allowed us to bring authors to the county virtually, which gives us a greater range and costs less in terms of payments to them. The interesting one there that I would draw attention to is the warm spaces one. You know, one of the things about libraries and library staff, you know, they are warm, they're safe, but it's also a non-judgmental space. So, you know, you might think for the gentleman who told us that, you know, that actually we haven't done our best by him by, you know, putting him on the route to finding him some accommodation. But actually, you know, for some of our customers and this gentleman, it was a lifestyle choice. You know, so, you know, he comes, he uses the library on a very frequent basis, but chooses, you know, that he lives in a certain way. So we, my colleagues did their best to make that as comfortable an existence for him as possible.
Thank you so much. I think that's quite powerful testimony. I certainly spoke to Alison this morning about the chap who spoke about coming to the library and was connected to attending the sleeping bag, and that was the conversation I was having to say, shall we take it a step further and get this guy into some sort of accommodation? And very interestingly, you know, Alison took the conversation in a different route, which is, well, we would do that, but this chap doesn't want it. He's very happy. This is his world. This is his lifestyle choice. And I think that also just demonstrates, as Alison pointed out, actually, it's a safe space in many ways. It's non-judgmental. Libraries are open to all, totally inclusive. And what I'll always say about libraries is they are completely free as well. So you're not financially prohibited in joining in the events or being part of that library world. So looking ahead into 23-24, we've stepped into this financial year now, and we have some of these priorities are actually in development and some will take place later over the course of this year. But we're very keen to continue to work on our digital offer to customers. It very much is a significant part of, can go a little way to reducing isolation in a large rural community. I think everybody through the pandemic got used to possibly ordering their supermarket shopping online and having it delivered to the front door, which might be very second nature to a lot of people, but not everybody has that digital confidence and ability. So we'd like to continue to work with our communities to make sure that those basic fundamental digital skills are there, which are becoming part of life's essentials now. We are looking at our key performance indicators. It is a useful marker when strategically crafted and relevant to enable us as service managers and service leads to measure progress, to compare and contrast and to benchmark. And that is an area that we are under development, in development now across our new directorate, which is Public Health, Inequalities and Stronger Communities. One of our main focuses on the horizon for this year is the development of a library service strategy. We are expectant of government guidance in the course of 2020. In development now. We might have another slide to touch upon that with a little bit more detail, but it very much is going to be, once that data is released and the guidance is released to local authorities, we will treat that as our main priority, because it's obviously the blueprint and the framework for libraries 2023, 2024 and beyond. So we need to be very focused on that particular area of development. We've developed a set of self-service options to customers and self-check-in and check-out of books, and we'd like to understand how effective and impactful that is and whether that can be rolled out more, because when it does work, it can open up the library service on a broader basis in terms of opening hours. And we are very, very keen to deliver a succession plan this year for the library service. We have an age force which is incredibly experienced, very, very dedicated. But if we look at the statistics in a two-dimensional way, we can profile with ease the age demographic and understand where our journey might be in 5 or 10 years' time with our staffing. So the time is right now to really develop a robust succession plan with a key to retaining talent and to be able to upskill and develop staff who have that potential to be the managers of the future. Our Reading for Wellbeing programme, as I outlined before, has been so impactful and so valuable and life-changing for many people as well. We have that programme in on a temporary basis. We have temporary funding, and we very much are looking to embed that on a longer term basis. It is established and evidence that the Reading for Wellbeing programme ultimately saves our NHS friends a significant amount of money, where a person is taken out of that NHS process. And that you could call it a slight treadmill at times, couldn't you? But they're kept away from that process and ultimately saves the public purse a significant amount of money. We'd also like to talk a bit more about what the library service does, what it offers. We'd like to market it more to our communities. I was quite inspired by our colleagues from Regeneration to talk about the bus plan actually, and how we could get that message out across our communities. I think some of the initiatives that we've spoken about, these subsidised fares, are amazing. But for younger people in particular, and I know Alison was taking some notes at the time, because we'd like to, a takeaway that we're going to take from today actually is how maybe libraries can support that information network to spread the information, the message about the bus fares. So I've touched upon the library service strategy, and it is in development now. So over the course of last year, Lord Parkinson, who's the Minister for Libraries, announced the appointment of Baroness Sanderson. She's going to help the TCMS to develop the future strategy and the new government guidance in relation to libraries and how they can be delivered. There's many organisations and facets to the development process. I do understand that local authorities will be part of that conversation as well. And we're very much hoping to have some updates in May 2023 as to how matters are progressing. Alison is part of the Libraries Connected Network, which is a national body. We're responsible for supporting local authority library services, and it's also an excellent communication channel as well, isn't it? So we're very confident that we'll have an early heads up of the strategy, its progress, and what that might mean for us. So I'll just continue to touch upon some of our priorities for the coming year. We want to take our hub libraries to another level, and in order to do that, we need to develop a local area prospectus, which is tied into each of those 5 hub libraries that I outlined at the beginning of the presentation. We see this as a gateway to delivering a hyperlocal service across the hub network. The design process commenced this month. We had a library service conference last week, and the local area prospectus work was launched at that event. And I'm delighted to say that that prospectus work is involving staff within the library service across a range of levels. It's not just a managerial initiative. We really have a very skilled and talented crew of staff in the library service whose knowledge is second to none about their own communities, and we want to take that and utilise it. And we're also working with our colleagues in Northumberland Communities Together and the Family Hub Network and the voluntary sector to best understand how we take the hub library concept to another level and really have that hyper-local service delivery. We'll continue to roll out an event programme. Again, we think that the local perspective will help feed that and enable us to understand what that event programme should look like for those local communities. We'd like to continue to develop Morpeth Library to understand the potential of that amazing site that we have there, to collaborate with partners. And from a pragmatic and practical point of view, we'd like to assess the directional signage across our hub library network to make sure that our communities know where the library is. It's a very basic thing, and we can't accept that's just a given. So we want to develop and work on that. So we have outreach and partnership working. This is this is an amazing hub for the libraries to develop, because the libraries can very much be part of the beginning of something good if we connect with colleagues and partners in NCT, with our archive colleagues and friends, with our like-minded colleagues across the local authority and beyond, actually. And this role has already commenced. We did some great work last year with registrars, whereby when babies are registered in Northumberland, there is some advice and guidance about the library service, and really focusing on that Best Start to Life initiative to engage families with reading, to engage children with reading, which is such a key fundamental development in the early years of a child, to encourage them to read. It is established and proven that that skill in itself will lead that person as they develop through their school and academic life to a much more successful life as an adult. We have collaborated with archives as well last year. Alison touched upon the Hadrian's Wall 1900 initiative, which was really well received. We had the exhibition actually in County Hall for a little while, which you may have noticed. It was out at Holt Whistle and across different parts of the community. But the collaboration opportunities with archives will really grow legs, we hope, over the course of this year, to blend the services in a closer working operation, and also to tap into some advanced skill sets that the archives have in terms of bid writing and funding applications, which we'd like to expand across libraries. The two sectors can often apply into very different pots of money, and we want to be able to maximise that to its absolute potential. As I touched upon before, the library service is relocated into the Public Health, Inequalities and Stronger Communities Directorate, and we think this is an excellent home for libraries and its future potential to contribute towards health and wellbeing and the inequality agenda. We'll also look at the schools library service over the course of this year to understand whether the service continues to meet demands of our education partners across the county, but very importantly so, to look at the next development stage for that service, to understand what our education partners need. Alison commenced that journey, I think, back in early part of this year, actually, wasn't it? Where she has worked with Audrey Kingham to network with the head teachers across the county to begin that conversation. So we certainly have a foot in the door there. And we will continue to work with Northumberland Communities Together. We meet with our NCT friends on a regular basis. We're part of the same directorate. We're very, very front-facing services, and we want to know how we can blend efficiently to have the maximum impact. So I just wanted to, a little bit of a slightly, dare I say, a fun slide actually, but a quote from Albert Einstein, which I'm sure everybody knows who it is. And I was quite enlightened to pick up this quote. So the only thing that you absolutely have to know is the location of the library. And that is one of our very simple key priorities, to connect our communities in our large county of Northumberland with our amazing library network, which, as Jeff has touched upon already, is a significant number of 30, plus a schools library service, plus a prison library service. It is no mean feat. And just lastly, one final slide, our contact details. We're very happy to take questions now, as I'm sure you might have some to ask. But if you have anything that you would like to cover at a later date, we're very, very happy to meet and have a chat. And you're very welcome, as ever, to visit any of our libraries. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. I'm glad you explained it was Albert Einstein, I thought it was a portfolio holder. Yeah.
Yeah, contact him.
You recruit.
No, that was fascinating. Thank you very much. And so we'll throw it open to questions. Does anybody have any questions? Nick.
Thank you. Thanks for the presentation and the report. It is actually really impressive what you're doing. Very impressive. But I wanted to ask you about the figures on library usage it's on page 24 of our report. And you've compared Q3 in 2021 with Q3 in 2022. It's a bit like my question to Neil about the plus figures. Could Q3 2021 be COVID affected? And in which case, could it?
Definitely, yes.
Yeah.
Without doubt, because I was, when we touched upon that scenario for the bus usage, actually, I have COVID. I think we all have COVID date stamped in our minds. It was one of those moments where you know where you were when we were locked down, etc., isn't it? And I know that lockdown commenced on the 23rd of March 2020, and certainly we had a bit of an in-out journey over the course of that the remainder of that year and into the year following. So yes, it's a very, very valid point that it certainly will have an impact on the number of people who use the library service. What we have found is that obviously Alison and her team deployed a different operating model through COVID because we wanted to, we knew that libraries had a key role to play actually in COVID, and we knew that libraries were a trusted partner to the community. So a lot of our familiar faces would welcome a wellbeing call from somebody from the libraries. I think there's a trusted relationship which was there. It wouldn't feel quite as cold as that communication coming through. But there was also a series of online events that took place through COVID. So we're very conscious that the doors were shut for a little while, but we did flex and change the service accordingly. So Alison and the team did a select and collect from the library, and yeah, and the online events which took place as well. So to try and counterbalance that, but yes, in terms of footfall and that standard metric, then yes, it's been
Yeah.
by COVID.
It made me think that the KPIs might look better than they actually are
Yeah.
for some of the physical things like physical book issues. But on the flip side, they might actually look worse than they really are for some of the digital services.
Yeah.
But basically, I was wondering if you had data for perhaps Q3 2019,
Yes.
and that might be a more genuine,
Yes.
more useful comparison than
Yes.
Q3 2022.
Will we have that data? Yeah, we'll have it. Very, very happy to share.
Yeah.
To give that broader context.
I thought that might be quite useful. So,
Yes, it's not a problem. We can share it with the whole of the committee. Yes.
Thank you, Nick. I,
Just got two questions, right? One of them is, I was at an event yesterday in Blyth and a resident, a friend of mine came and asked me if I could find out what was happening with South Beach Library. I don't want you to explain that here, but I would really appreciate an email on that.
Yeah.
It's Eileen Corley.
Yes.
The one thing that I'm actually quite keen on is to do is all going to go out and consult in the local community. Please bear in mind, there are community projects out there already doing what you're starting to do.
Yeah.
And do not overlap provision,
Yeah.
because as soon as you start overlapping provision, you're taking away other community centre work, and then funding becomes harder and it's a domino effect. So whatever you do will have consequence on everybody else.
Yeah, it's a point well made and received as well.
Yeah.
So we're very keen to deploy our resources as efficiently as we possibly can. And if there is, in that particular community, as you've outlined, certainly it's being met already and very well with voluntary networks and groups, then certainly we would not aim to compete with that. We would take that as an opportunity to maybe deliver something slightly different, which is either complementary or in complete contrast, but we certainly wouldn't be in competition.
Right, quite pointless. Absolutely pointless.
Yeah. Best use of time, isn't it, and money?
Absolutely.
Which is something we're hardwired to do. But obviously, we spoke about the local area perspectives, and we will take that out. I think, Alison, you will be taking that to the local area committees.
Yeah,
So we'll have that broad conversation to make sure that we've got the right people cited and we've got the right level of input coming through as well.
So I'm certainly happy to be part of that consultation.
Would welcome your views.
Thank you.
No, sorry, I think Mr. Gallagher's before me.
oh,
He's had his
right.
hand up for hours.
Yes.
Great, thank you very much. A really good presentation, and well done, you and your team. Just a couple of things. Well, I'll ask the three questions, and it's generally you said about the link up of where and how you're getting your message out, and I'm just wondering, do you link up with museums? What other outside bodies do you do? And dare I say, local council offices and local councils, and obviously job centres. That would the link up. You mentioned about how you sent some guy to the Real Deal Plus in Ashington, and and it's a lifestyle choice.
Yes.
I don't particularly agree with that. And the reason why that I know that they were handing tents out and sleeping bags, and it's the right thing to do to try and look after them. But ironically, there was a few landed up in the ward that I represent, and just put their tents up there and they were there for it. But the consequences of that were that there was a lot of concern in the local area. One about the safety of these people, and it just seemed to be 3 or 4. This was prior to COVID.
Right.
after COVID, it's kind of settled down. People were sleeping in really bad, dangerous positions and places. So that's a concern that when we do things like that, and you mentioned it.
Yeah.
I think it's something that we need to kind of keep under the stealth. It's not a badge of honor. But the other thing is at page 29, I take a great interest in apprenticeships. And it's good to see that you've got 4 apprenticeship posts and one of them has been told on small time.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering, at the end of their training, their apprenticeships, do we try and divert these people into positions within the county council? And on the back of apprenticeships, we've just had a presentation about local transport. I remember a lot of years ago, there was a young lad, travelled from Ashington. He was an apprentice at this organisation, Northumberland County Council. He was embarrassingly paid, and he would hang around to see who could give him a lift home to save money on the bus. So just as an idea, if we're reducing the price of the buses and we're not paying our apprenticeships any money, have a look at maybe a scheme to help these people travel to their place of work. Even the idea of, I'm understanding that they're in fixed positions at Morpeth, Cramlington and various, so their jobs are restricted to those people in those areas. A lot of years ago, I tried to introduce maybe young people going through their apprenticeships to get them their driving license. And we've got a lot of pool cars within Northumberland County Council. And the reality is it's a two-win thing where we can get away with paying apprenticeships lower wages, but also at the end of it, they'll see that through because they'll know they'll have a full license at the end of it.
Yeah.
So it's just trying to support the apprenticeships in the best way we can. And I worked it out, it's only going to be £500 a year per apprentice if they need it to use the travel documents that are there online there now.
Just to reassure you that we actually have already been working with one of our apprentices while they've been with us to alleviate some of that financial pressure. Trying to find a way through. So yeah, it is welcome news, but yeah, we'll
Get these guys to pay them more.
we're doing that. The gentleman in question, in terms of signposting into provisions for intense legal matters, that was part of the warm spaces initiative over this winter. So, I take your point. We can offer information and we can signpost, but, that is the extent of our influence, if you like. And in terms of link ups, we already do have a lot of link ups. Job Centre Plus you mentioned.
Yeah.
Blythe, I know we have a steady stream of customers who they refer to us to do their job search using our public access IT. We can offer one-to-one support if they're not confident with that. And the example that I gave you is from our digital champion at Blythe, who had supported an elderly customer in that instance. And in terms of getting them our communication out there about what we're doing and where we are. Hopefully you do all receive our newsletter monthly. Please, you're very welcome to share that as widely as possible. And if we do have specific events in particular wards, we will approach local councillors and ask them to help us promote those events.
Yeah. But just on the back of that chair, it's a two-edged sword. So that if you've got anybody within your hub or your library that has them questions, a list of county councillors and their contact details. For everybody, irrespective of what colour you are.
Yeah, both staff do. They already do provide that information.
The library service has changed as well in the front desk. They're not just librarians anymore. They are a source of customer information as well, and particularly over the COVID period. I think every librarian will be able to tell members of the public how they can report a pothole or light off, which is what they need to be for, and they will point in the direction of more difficult things. When you talked about tents and things, I thought, what? the library service wasn't given out tents, we'd be pointing it to communities together who assess whether they should have a tent or not, but
Yeah.
it wasn't part of that.
Yeah, the reason why I
Picking
brought
up
up,
tents.
the reason why I brought it up, Jeff, was it was in a presentation.
Yeah.
And really, I
Just-
don't think it should have been there.
Just don't understand, so difficult things like that, we know who to point them to.
Yeah.
We don't actually ask the librarians to deal with it, just
No,
to
no.
be
Yeah,
a sign.
sure, signpost.
Yeah.
It's that source of information, isn't it? Because
Yeah.
people will come into the library because it is the doors are open, it's a welcome and relaxed space, so people will come in and ask anything actually.
Yes.
It can be quite random at times. Just something that I possibly would like to touch upon with you now, in terms of libraries, we're in the process of running a pilot at Hexham Library actually with our customer service colleagues, and it's really to consider and understand how our library staff and customer service staff can support each other. So to grow that skill set and knowledge at Hexham as a pilot, to see how that works, aiming to be able to achieve first point of contact on more cases where people come in person to seek advice and guidance. So over the course of March in libraries, our library assistants have been signposting people to, you know, how to renew your blue badge, for example, in the bus pass and things like that. So some of the everyday frequent queries that will come in as a local authority, in some occasions, at Hexham can be dealt with by the library staff, or it can be signposted. We have a wonderful thing called, which the team call the backbone, which customers are able to use in a private space at Hexham, which will take them through to the contact centre for more complex queries like housing benefit calculations and things like that, maybe planning queries, etc. So we are looking to take the service to another level in terms of that in-person experience and how far we can deal with inquiries and have them resolved rather than signposting everything. So there'll be some things where we can, you know, deal with, assess and decide and determine and conclude.
Good, thank you. Brilliant. Thank you very much. Anne.
Thank you. First of all, I will agree with what Eileen's saying, because I think it's very, you know, we've had all the days where we've been told we have to, you know, build a community aspect, you know, not take it away. And I have sometimes, I've had people complaining about not the library service, but other services taking away from the voluntary sector. And really, you know, they're not happy. And, you know, they've undermined their work and they feel very, which I think quite rightly. So, just about the, probably, I don't know if there's anybody here when we built Credit Library. We developed that, well, there was 3 of us who developed Credit Library. It's owned by the Credit Partnership, and we developed Credit Library. So it's a brand new Credit Partnership, had all the service sectors in it. So basically it was a one-stop shop.
Yeah.
And we already did, and I think through the council, we had, there's a one-stop shop. So you could go in there, and the library service people there were trained to answer, you know, provide this, that, and the other. So it's been going on for quite a long time, since 2016. And Credit probably was at the forefront of being a hub then, because we provided all the housing, we had housing and we had benefits, everybody was in. However, the need for all those things changes over a period of time. There was a voluntary sector in there. But what I was trying to say is that you've got the Hexham as a hub, and Hexham is fabulous, and it's a massive building. But please, you know, the Credit Partnership is doing a tremendous amount of work as a partnership, well-being, health, everything you can possibly think of. And you know, it's a brilliant building, and we made it work. But obviously, you know, I just hope and respect that the council will respect that.
Yes.
As part of the community hub.
Yes.
Because it does. I mean, Credit, an area, there's a bigger Credit, is bigger than Hexham. But you've got Credit, the community hub down at the bottom of the schools, which is different. So they are broken up there. But certainly they're doing apprenticeship, they're doing skills, they're doing everything. So it's a really alive centre. But there's only a place in there for library. So it's not enormous, but we've got computers and everything else in there. And it's all been very much.
And we are working partnership.
And you do, I mean, I think that's the main thing, because it's everybody having ownership of this, that, and the other. It's not, it's a partnership and everybody together. And I think that that's what I was going back to, mine going back, saying that, you know, it's respecting partnerships and actually saying, well done, Credit, or well done, whatever. You know, everybody's doing their part. Because I think the number is, I mean, it's a really good report. Thank you very much. The library service has always been a hard slog. And in fact, the position of this county now with levelling up and equality does give it an opportunity, especially with the pandemic. She break up as long as you don't go into a sector that's already been sort of die volunteer. I think that's what I'm saying. So well done, no, it's a good report, and I look forward to seeing it. I don't go to, I go from Tolstoy to a very undermined, I won't tell you where I read when I have it. You do have it in the library.
Put as a good example, you say, you know, we'd like to, why wouldn't we respect it about safety? Why wouldn't we? Because it's good, and we'll have other places similar throughout the county, which would, like Cramlington, for example, is really a good example. So yes, we are fully aware of that, and we're trying to build on that to make it throughout the company a place where somebody can go, can get all sorts of help, they can probably get a coffee, they can get a computer access if they want to, and get get advice. That's exactly what we're trying to do.
Brilliant. Can I ask two questions then on the back of that, just very briefly? One is that libraries used to be often tourist information centres as well. Do we still do that? And what's the sort of, I mean, I know the Tourist Information Service sort of contracted and so on. So, and then the other is, are you still looking to sort of develop new community partnerships with some of the smaller libraries too? So is there an opportunity for somewhere like Corbridge to extend its opening hours by working with you and building a volunteer network?
Yes. Take the tourist information first. We've got half a dozen libraries that have absorbed, I think would be the right term, the tourist information centre in that community. And now we've branded it a visitor information offer because visitors turn up all over the place. You know, it isn't just in those designated areas. So yes, we are working with our tourism colleagues in Visit Northumberland to ensure that the information that the staff have and the staff are trained and aware to offer that information across the county as a whole. And then in terms of the new community partnerships, yes, we are working with interested groups in a number of communities. They all tend to take their own journey, you know, so, you know, we have been working with Corbridge in recent months, and that journey will continue. I'm pleased to say, up at Allendale, the Allen Valleys Local History Society are helping us supplement our Saturday openings there by virtue of giving us some of their time that they're also spending working with their own records that we house. And the Falcon Centre Action Group at Wylam is another group that we're working with, and at Wooler we have a partnership with the Glendale Trust, and we're working closely with them to deliver a service, you know, for that community as well.
Brilliant. Great. Thank you very much.
Can I just say, you know, obviously the biggest thing you've got are computers and the entrance where you go in and get in. And if you're a visitor, where you go, where can I go today? What can I do? Is the computerization which links in with tourism, etc. So you've got your selling point, but also you've got your complaint point, or your concern point, or please can you help me point. So it's two, and it's an opportunity for both.
Councillor Moore.
Thank you. It says on page 32 of our report that we might be introducing 3D printing for libraries.
Yes.
That's true.
It's I'm going to Alison handle this one, because I know that she's, it's something you've been.
It's an interesting one because in terms of digital development, we always have to put it through the prism of a Northumberland context. So actually, just winning the lottery, or, you know, gaining some substantial funding to provide that sort of equipment across the county. What we're actually investigating now are digital pens that actually are far more portable, that we can move around, but actually do a modicum of 3D printing, so we can give people the experience and then signpost them to maybe other locations within that community, picking up on the Carty's point, you know, that it's not about us keeping all the business to ourselves, it's about us signposting to all the places in the community where other opportunities like that might be available. You know, I would love to say that we had a full suite of digital equipment, certainly in our hubs, to enable people to come in and utilise them. But we do have a lot of portable equipment that we do move around either as part of the techie tea parties or as part of our coding for families. You know, that gives people that experience, the first steps in the informal learning of that digital equipment.
Thank you.
Great. Well, that's been fascinating. So unless anybody's got any other questions, we'll draw it to the close. And thank you very much. I think in terms of points to yeah.
Any comments really would be for the officers of the board.
Yeah, I mean, I think just keep us up to date. I mean, we get the monthly newsletters anyway, so we know what's going on, and you do that very well. But if there's anything you specifically want us to push as councillors, I'm sure all 67 of us would be willing to do that. And yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Fascinating.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So I think the last item on the agenda is just the communities in place work programme. Does anybody have any comments on that?
Yes, and this is actually the monthly programme.
I'm sorry.
The end of the year. We'll start work on next year's programme. I'm not surprised it's all for this year. But if there are any issues that you want to pick up from the last programmes, you want to look at again in 2024 to let myself know the chair, vice chairman, will endeavour to find these on it. But that's well.
Yeah, can I just ask, just the, people are being on to me about this one, but the public report from the local government social account on the report 5, LVFO, resident relation to post-16 transport policy, does that come to this? Is that, post-16 transport?
I think it's facts.
Is it? I have no idea, I couldn't be one that I have no idea. It's just, thank you, I'm glad it's somewhere anyway.
Right, well, I think that, I mean, that's it, we're trying to reach the end of so the AGM is coming up, and then we're into the sort of new scrutiny year, so it's probably worth just saying a quick thank you to Dawn and Nicola for helping run this committee, and obviously Jeff for chairing it before I did, so thank you very much.
Yeah, everybody, just quickly, please.
I'm doing any other business. So that's
Nasty. Right now.
Right, are you bring any other business?
No.
Can I just bring up,
Do you think maybe?
sorry, yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks,
Okay. Thank you.
I'm really glad that information from you. That's so good. Thank you. It's just one little point, I'm just wondering, because we've had 2 meetings rather quickly.
Yes.
Right, if there will be any support available for to get minutes out in time. Now, because obviously 2 meetings quick together is really hard for someone to minute. And I was really particularly keen today that the minutes were here because I wanted to ensure my comments from the last committee meeting that we had about my disagreement with the current changes that you were talking about in cabinet is on that, on their minutes, and I just want to make sure that they will be on their minutes when they are produced. But I do think that's something that needs to be looked into here for getting the minutes out on time and maybe some extra support for whoever writes the minutes out.
Yeah, well, I'm sure, I mean, in terms of the minutes would go to council as well, wouldn't they? So they will. No, okay.
I mean, that's one of the things that are still to be resolved.
Yeah.
You know, how we close that gap, because presumably, I think it's October, November,
And then I kicked off.
I just think,
Such a possible.
I think
I just think normal committees, you would have minutes, and I
Yeah.
understand the quickness between these two meetings has been very quick.
it has been, and I think that's been
And
an
I think
unusually,
that's very unfair
yeah,
on the person
Wouldn't
who
happen
writes
next
the
year.
minutes out.
no,
I don't think it's right, but I really think meetings should not go ahead without minutes of a previous meeting. In my experience, that's how it's always been.
yeah.
Chair, just to back on that, full council now, and shows right, the conversations are there, but the minutes aren't present. They're not presented to full council. And, it's our log to say that things have moved forward. They do need to be there. And I think that, say Nicola has a holiday and decides to go anywhere, Barbados or wherever. At the end of the day, the support needs to be there. And, and I think that, that it's an important bit of document. And,
Well,
I've
I'll
raised
raise
the
it. I mean, your points are noted, and I'll raise it. I'll talk to Barry as the business chair about it. And we can, and I'm sure Barry can have a conversation, probably be with.
See, my concern is that we haven't got it in scrutiny now, and we haven't got it in full council.
Jackie, wouldn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, it would be dry.
So we can have it, but in terms of the points that you made at the last meeting, I think this is on the agenda, scrutiny arrangements are on the agenda for the AGM. So you'll have absolutely full
I would full clarity what I
opportunity
said.
to be
was
able
on the
to make
minutes.
those points again in front of all councillors,
Yeah,
and anybody else you want to make them to. So
yeah,
that opportunity won't be lost.
yeah, because I definitely want to be written.
Yeah,
Yeah.
can I just, I think we've got there might be a problem with the lack of transparency, because we are making recommendations to cabinet at this meeting. And I would like to see those in the public domain in writing.
Yeah,
So if we are making, if we are making recommendations to the cabinet, right, where will they appear? Where will we actually, when cabinet gets up and we say, I'm sorry, but we give you recommendation, where if they haven't listened or anything's minuted, there's going to be a massive gap in transparency.
would you agree?
Well, the cabinet meetings are shown on YouTube, so everybody can watch, see any comments that are made here. You can watch the cabinet meeting. The cabinet meetings are also minuted, except the issue about the timing of minutes. And I think this time it's an extraordinary circumstance because we've actually had two meetings.
It's not so much about this time, it's about the general, and I think Anne's 100% right. And it's not about even this particular meeting. It's on about that if we have a meeting, we do a scrutiny, we'll do a deep dive, whatever we do, we'll voice our opinions and contributions and support as well. And the full fact of the matter is sometimes cabinet is meet a few days later.
Yeah.
So that actually this meeting that we're having, if cabinet will meet in 2 or 3 days' time, is worthless because you haven't took the concerns of scrutiny. There hasn't been enough time for that.
Sean would do a note and.
Sean would do a note and it goes to cabinet. And when I sat in cabinet, there was always
Jeff, you just have to go there.
at the end of the.
Well, I mean, it's all, it's just,
No, it's not, what's the point of us sitting here?
sorry.
Right, absolutely. We're all speaking at the same time. Can I just, we've got a meeting, a council meeting, and one of the items I know on the agenda is going to be new scrutiny arrangements. So all of the concerns that anybody has about scrutiny meeting, you can raise those in the full council meeting, and there'll be a perfect opportunity and we'll have a proper debate. Apart from the fact that I've got an entirely separate role as one of the Constitution Working Group, I have very little to do with the changes to the scrutiny arrangements. And as it happens, the Constitution Working Group meeting this Friday, I can't attend because I've got another commitment. So, but I think there's anybody else in this room on that group. But there will be.
I've got a meeting on Friday about it.
It probably is. But we've also, I think there have been 5 meetings around the new scrutiny arrangements and the new constitution arrangements that have been open to all members. The there's been a whole heaps of emails and documents circulated to all members. So hopefully, I mean, I'm not speaking on behalf of the administration because I'm a scrutiny chair, but I certainly feel like I've been kept well informed, and there will be an opportunity for us all to debate that. At the AGM.
Two points of clarification, just if it might help.
Because I'm not convinced, right?
Well, on the discussion about the Northern Bus Services. First of all, because I'm into it. I have already written the report, so it's a report that has 4 bullet points that will be circulated with the cabinet agenda alongside substantive report. And so that will be, when Karen sends the papers out for cabinet, she will send the report from this meeting that's in next name. So that's the first thing, and that will be on the council's website because the papers will be ready in time.
Will they include it, will it be included in the council on the agenda? That will the
Yes.
recommendation be included on the cabinet agenda? Under that, whatever it is.
When the cabinet considers a substantive report, it will consider the report that I've written from this committee alongside it, and we will take them together.
It's like lack of transparency. We can find it's the public we represent,
That's exactly.
and we are actually, it's lack of transparency for the public to absolutely follow through things. And there are a lot of people who sit and follow through things, certain things. And we need to be ensure that we are transparent so the public know that we've done our work properly.
That's exactly what I want. All I'm asking from the last meeting.
Can I just
All I'm asking from the last meeting, the points that I made from the last meeting and my total disagreement with the changes of scrutiny be minuted. I asked 3 times.
There will be minuted. They will be minuted, and you'll have the opportunity at the AGM to repeat those concerns. And everybody will be able to hear you say that. So that's absolutely fine, and we'll make sure that I will have a discussion with Barry, and I'm sure Barry will talk to Jackie about whether there's anything that can be done to increase resource. But I think the key point is this month we've had two meetings within a month, and they've only been basically 3 weeks apart. So it's been a short period, and I think that's perfectly understandable. Those minutes will come to the next available meeting, and that will just happen as a matter of course. I personally would be reluctant to not have a scrutiny meeting because we don't have the minutes of the previous meeting, because most of the items on the agenda, other than the minutes of the previous meeting, are entirely separate agenda items and nothing to do with the minutes of the last meeting. So I think we would be basically just building up a sort of workload backlog if we were to take that approach. But in the same, so I think I'll pick up those points. You'll have your chance on the at the AGM in May. Brian,
Just a very clear bit of clarity. This is no blame on any member of staff.
No, absolutely.
This is around timing and the delivery of reports in a timely way.
yeah, no, I don't think anybody was thinking
Well,
it was a.
but I thought you see it
Yeah, it's.
It won't happen next year, we won't have 2 weeks to discuss together. The timetable